All right, I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. The board wants to provide ample opportunity for public comment on matters that come before us. Your input is important. If you wish to address an item already on the agenda, we ask that you do so when that item comes up for discussion. If you have a comment on a matter not on the agenda, this is the time during our meeting for such comments. The board would like to remind everyone in attendance that to avoid violations of individual rights of privacy, a member of the public wishing to address the board during this time will not be allowed to make comments about any student, staff member, or member of the general public during this time. Does anyone wish to speak at this time? Well, you're next. Public or recognition of individuals, delegations, and correspondence. Mr. Ed Schindel.
I just want to give a report on the buses. Everything ran great this year. We didn't have any major problems at all. I would like to service the two big ones before the fall season start. That would be the full lube, oil, filters, and everything. So if we could do that, I can schedule it as long as it's done around the 1st of August. The only other major problem that we had was one of the drivers tried to drive through one of the doors. And hopefully by the end of July, we might get that fixed. Otherwise, we'll have one day that's closed. So that's about all I have.
And that should be fixed here shortly. They actually got that panel in.
Oh, really?
Yes, early.
Obviously.
So they were doing something out there. I don't know if they fixed it yet or they will shortly.
I think servicing the buses is probably a very logical thing to do. And so I think we can go ahead and allow him to do that.
You betcha.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Items for discussion. Let's jump around here for a minute. Do we have anything on the hail claim? Any further?
Yeah, well, we're just in the middle of the design documents. We're currently going through all the different roof sections. We've got those all identified and they're starting to do their cross sections on their design. We get full design docs. We'll get ready to put that out. That'll go out this fall, though. We'll wait. We're not going to get anybody to give us a decent price right now. We never probably get it done before school anyways. So we'll bid that this fall and then obviously we'll be done next year. But there's a lot to there's a lot of pieces and parts.
Right.
So, and I've been in touch, obviously working with your guys' insurance carrier on all that, so he knows that it's coming.
Well, go ahead and start into the elementary children project.
I'll start with the middle school, our asbestos abatement. Well, actually the school did a good job, got everything cleaned out of our way. We started the phase 1, and that came in, cleared out on Saturday. We got our clearances. So for first phase, it's all the north classrooms. We're done with that. They've actually started demolition in those classrooms. Phase 2, they started abatement on that. In fact, we just talked to them a couple minutes ago, and they're actually maybe even a little bit ahead, but we'll see where it comes out when we get the final clearances. But that shouldn't hold us up, so we should be on schedule with the middle school, so that's good. The whole building excavation, we've completed all the excavation and the haul off of that. We're currently about $13,000 over budget on what we had budgeted. There's a little bit left to come on end work. We don't know what that exact number is, but it shouldn't be too unmanageable, so I'm going to guess that's going to be in the 15,000 range. That'll come off of our contingency. And we had a $70,000 placeholder that we went in with, so not terrible. It could have been much worse. So we don't expect a big swing over that. Press box, we actually got DAC, and had to thank them for they're willing to take that on for us, which is a big deal. Yeah, it's a really big deal. I know it's really tough for them to do because obviously they're really worried about making sure that middle school was up and ready to run, but they did commit to taking that on. They're supposed to get pricing to me tomorrow. We have some electrical stuff to work through, but as soon as we have that, we'll bring it forward and we'll get moving on Schedule-wise, they're through, we're ready to start pouring slabs in Area C, which means all of our underground's in. They expect to be doing that later this week. That'd be a big deal. When you start seeing flat concrete, following close on the heels with that, we'll actually start some of this steel. You'll start seeing stuff go vertical. Area B and A, we're finishing the foundations and footings. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to walk around that, but you can kind of see where they're at, but they're getting ready. We'll start backfilling and having slabs here shortly. So as far as schedule goes, we're doing really well. Okay. With the caveat of we had a slow start with the building.
They're still a hair behind.
They seem to be gaining some ground.
Yeah.
What I've been watching, so, which is good. We're pouring slabs now. We're in perfect shape.
Shane, I know you're talking about the press box, since we've allocated funds for that separately, then that'll just, once they do that, then they'll just submit the invoice.
Yeah, I'll have
Regular
them do that as a proposal, and, because I don't want to commingle the funds, obviously, we can't commingle the funds, so I'll watch how that goes. As soon as I get the pricing, I'll bring you the proposal forward, you guys say yay or nay, and we'll set up
Okay, thanks.
some sort of a side piece that's tracked separately.
Right.
So we have no commingling of funds, then we can't do that.
Thank you.
I guess I want to touch on one thing with Shane before we let Shane go. We're going to have a little more discussion about, the ESSER funds and setting up a committee to work on those. But, one thing we've identified, capital purchases, things that go, that were one-time money, things are good things for the ESSER things that don't continue on. We had the controls for the middle school that we took off of our alternate. Those types of things would be something we could very well look at doing, and possibly even taking that a little further and actually doing some of the mechanical work in the middle school that we didn't have in the project, that we might be able to bring some of those ESSER funds. And Shane's been working with other districts and has plans and proposals that we're going to put together. And then it'll just come down to, whether the board, the district decides that's important enough to do or not. But I don't know if you have any more to add to that before you.
There's specific rules that go with those ESSER funds. And one of the big things is mechanical systems, air quality, air filtration, things like that. And depending on wherever you guys land on where you want to spend that money, that would be a good place to take care of that and get rid of some of your deferred maintenance. And then if we do decide to do the controls and the equipment, it's a different set of controls because we would have new equipment at that point. So we'll want to revisit the control piece and have that done as a package if you guys choose to do that. So that's the way I would approach that. And then as well as in your high school, a couple of things that we've identified is the water heater. Your water heater is on its last leg. I would say that would probably be a deferred maintenance priority for you guys, as well as other air handling equipment in the gym.
Great.
That's another one that's been out there for quite a while. So our life cycled out quite a ways. So I think there's some improvements that you obviously could put as priorities that would give you some longevity on your deferred maintenance list. So however you guys choose.
Even those boilers that we already spent the money on, because we can pay that money back. So we could actually put that money that we spent on those boilers back in our basically coffer.
Yeah.
How's procurement looking on that kind of stuff?
You know, and that was one thing I covered this with one of the things that's always tough is when you have a project going, and also we're going to be inside of that project, and it's a bond project, and we don't want to commingle funds, but there is no way you would step out and have a different mechanical contractor come in and try to do a project inside of our project.
Right.
So I've got to work through the intricacies if you guys choose to do that, of how we keep from commingling the funds. But I know that we check mark the box saying we can utilize it for that, right, if you so choose. And I know Erin went back and forth, I believe she agrees. It would just be the commingling of them.
Sub-accounts and something like that.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, other than maybe it's like run a side proposal. But I still want it to be underneath their contracts. We still have, like bonding and stuff like that, covering us and insurances in place without having to try to have a different contractor try to essentially come in. It wouldn't work.
Right.
So that would be the biggest hurdle, I would say, would be trying to make sure that I can delineate that for us on a commingling, non-commingling basis with the bonds. But that's where you guys choose to do with the money. So.
What is the timeline for getting a decision on the middle school stuff?
If we could have it, the sooner the better, obviously, because we have to do some further design if we're going to replace that equipment. If you could get it in the next 3-4 weeks, month, if that's reasonable, we would integrate that into the project probably next summer, and come in, pull all that equipment out, do all the controls at that point, which we were planning on doing the controls if you guys chose to do that, if we have contingency, like we were going to do that next summer anyways, and we would just dovetail that project together. So I'd say, month, maybe even 2, but we've got to give them enough time to make sure that they get it designed out appropriately. So,
The equipment will bring you some fresh air.
yeah, air quality goes up.
Air quality, a big deal.
Yeah, I think it would be a big advantage to add some more to that project to the middle school, but yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to start that while Shane was still here. So, any other questions, comments for them? Otherwise, we'll let you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
COVID-19 response.
All right. So in order to be able to apply for the ESSER funds, we have to have in place a safe return to school and continuity of services plan. And it needs to be adopted, and it needs to be put on our webpage by June 24th. So that's coming up quickly. And we have to have those, so it has to be public, that we have a plan in place still to keep school open to the best of our ability and to do so safely. So Montana, PEC, PC, whatever it is, they came up with actually a continuity of service plan. So they've got a thing we can work off of. And what MTSBA suggested is we review our 1900 policies, go through them, see what we need, see what we don't need, make sure this plan needs to be supported by those policies. And so what I would recommend is we get a committee of a couple board members, myself, probably a couple board members and myself, sit down, go through these, review them, see what we need to do to be able to make recommendations, to come back, have a special board meeting where we can say, this is what we suggest we do with these. We need these to support this, and adopt that so we can post that on our website by the 24th. I know that's a short timeline. One thing that's possible to do, and I'm just throwing this out, is, we have an end date on our 1900 policies of June 30th of this year. Other schools have adopted that policy will be in place. The 1900 policies will be in place until the board votes to basically get rid of those 1900 policies. So if we don't do any major changes, like I said, this continuity of service plan is supported by the 1900 policies. You can almost keep in place what we have, continue cleaning, continue to try to do social distancing to the best of our ability, those things. So we have them in place, and actually have them in place until those funds are, basically you have to have these safety things in place to continue with the ESSER funds through 2024. So that's just one of the things that they say we have to have before we can start applying for those funds. So I don't know if we have anybody that's willing to sit down, look at a date, hopefully, I don't know, we can do it later this week or sometime next week. We were talking about the 17th, I believe.
Thursday.
To sit down, if somebody wants to, a couple board members want to sit down with me to look these through, and
Probably.
I can.
oh yeah, and add Susie,
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
That's,
help.
I mean, she gets to inherit all this, so. But sit down and at least pound that out, so when we come to a special board meeting, we kind of have all our ducks in a row. We are not spending all night talking about it. So, I don't know if we have anybody that's willing.
I can do
I
next.
certainly can. My only bad day is Monday, the 14th, and Tuesday, the 15th.
That Thursday, I think, would work.
But
Okay.
a week from.
Yeah,
this
a week
Thursday.
from this Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 17th, I think, is right.
How long do you think our other meeting's gonna last?
I don't know.
We have an ESSER fund meeting at 2:00. I'm thinking about 4:00. Is that doable for
4
you?
o'clock, yeah, later in the day works better for me since I've got to come from Helen, but I'll make whatever work.
4:00?
Who is the ESSER fund meeting with?
That's gonna be with Shane and his crew to come up with some of the ideas that we can use the ESSER funds for, what we can use it for on their end. I'm gonna be working on, probably with Susie, on what we can use it for on our end, and then we balance the two out. So that's what that meeting is.
But we're gonna have to have a special board meeting to approve the proposal that comes out of.
Yes, so that's the second thing we gotta come up with, is when we can have a special meeting before the 24th of June to approve these.
16th work? The 15th is the construction meeting, right, at 4? We move it before or after that?
Could we do it the 22nd?
We could do it the 22nd. So you're.
I'm just
saying have
thinking
them-
we need a little more time probably then, because otherwise we're looking at just a week from now, right?
What if we did the work meeting on the 15th after the pre-construction? I think is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I can if it were after about 3 o'clock. I've got work entanglements for first about 3/4 of the day.
Well, we won't be available till 5.
Right, yeah.
5 o'clock.
So can we do that?
Yeah.
That might be better to do it a little earlier than do we try to have a,
But now you got me confused.
I think that's to go over our 1900 policies, the committee, to go over this and try to get this tuned in.
Okay.
That would actually work better for me.
Rather than the 17th.
Yes.
So we'll do that the 15th. Okay, yeah, no. Once I come to the construction meeting, I usually write the day off, so.
Okay.
Do you need another board member or?
If I've got Jason and Todd, I think I'm okay.
And then we need to schedule that special board meeting.
Yes. So that's what we need to,
That's what I was thinking. If we could do that the 22nd, that gives us the 2 days before that is due, but gives us a little more leeway if something comes
if we don't
up
get
and
it all
we-
done,
right.
when we need to meet again to cash something out, then that gives us a little more space. 22nd, okay for anybody, at least a quorum?
What day is that?
It's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
It's,
I have my last board meeting at my current school on the 22nd, but if we've already
Yeah, we should have
put
had
the plan together and are in agreement, it's just a matter of you guys voting on it. If that's okay with you, I wouldn't be able to make it the 22nd.
okay, 6 o'clock, okay with you guys?
We're doing the same thing.
So the 22nd at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And that's actually all I have on that right now.
okay. Committee meeting reports. I know we've got negotiations. Do you want to start with that, Kevin, or do you want?
Oh, sure. I guess in your board meeting packet, the collective bargaining agreement, and I think we added, I haven't seen this since it was updated, from Mark and Brian, but we added that first section. I'm not seeing it here.
No, it's the one right below it.
This is it, right?
That should be the one, yeah, I printed it wrong the first
Yeah,
time.
you
so-
can throw the one in your left hand away.
There was a section 1 that we added at the beginning that we put in.
For what?
There was a section 1 that we did right at the beginning of negotiations as far as the kind of the rules for negotiation. It's called section 1, something, I can't remember.
I did do that a long time ago, did I?
We approved that with the teachers union as far as submitting proposals for changes and, I don't know. I think I sent it to you in the email too, Jason.
Yeah, I have it here, just a second. But no, we did not
No,
forget.
I guess I misunderstood. I know you.
No, I
put
missed it
those
too, but
rules.
we did go through it with the union, so
Okay,
they're aware of it, but we knew to add it.
okay.
Yeah, and it just, it's Article 1 just establishes a, you can make it Article 1A or something, I don't know, there's other numbers here, but establishes a process for collective bargaining, talks about good faith bargaining, and what the main point of it is that each side, if they have any changes to the contract they want to make, is done but through a proposal process, and that would be include section number, proposed changes, the purpose, and what parties would be affected in order to, just to kind of streamline the process so that we don't have proposals being thrown out and then trying to vet through them, have a little bit more of an intentional process to make it a little more streamlined, I think. And that was the point of that, really. And we started out working pretty well in the beginning, the first couple of meetings, and then it kind of got looser as we went. But I think it did help put some sideboards on the negotiating process so that we're not all over the map on stuff.
Yeah, they brought forward, some set things that they wanted, and it did help guide and keep it on track.
Yeah, in years past, we've been all over the place on that. It just keeps it cleaner. The emergency leave, we added a section that allows people who are caught in situations or circumstances beyond their control to, it allows the superintendent to grant them additional leave days, which I don't know if that's really different than what we had before, but it's
Spelled out.
just stated in the contract now. The floating days, this allows if an individual's out of their personal leave days, they can convert 2 sick days to personal leave, but they can't carry it over or get compensated for it at the end of the year. They have to use them right then. And that's also requires approval of the building immediate supervisor is the way it's worded. Okay.
Yeah, in essence, that one, rather than somebody, if they've used their personal days, rather than calling in sick when they're not really sick, they have the option to relocate, 2 sick days into personal days. It's just,
Yeah.
it makes it.
to call in sick after the 8th.
It was one of the give and take things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the only other thing we have is the pay increase.
1.5%.
Yeah, 1.5% bump on the base. And then, of course, we can reopen negotiations next year. It looks like we'll have more money through the state, having a 2.5% bump. So, maybe we can, 1.5% isn't keeping up with the cost of living right now, increases that we're seeing. So, yeah, we may reopen that next year, or they have the opportunity to.
Yeah, the only other thing that we talked about in the meeting, and I mentioned it to Todd a little bit ago, is, I'd like whoever's on the negotiating committee, whether we change that, keep it the same, but try and move this process sooner in the year. I think it'd be better for everybody, the administration and the teachers too. We need to start this, probably January. I think waiting this long and this late just creates uncertainty and potential problems. So I'd like to see us move that up. I realize that we're somewhat tied into waiting on legislative years to see where the final dollars may end up, but I think we can get most of it done sooner and be a lot better for everybody. But other than that, yeah, it went good. It went well.
Yeah. And if I'm not, I would just like to say, if I'm not on it again, I think this section 1 or article 1 that we added is pretty beneficial in regards that someone may bring something forward and they'll say that this is bad, or this doesn't work, this is bad, and we need to change it or fix it. It's really helpful if they identify what's bad with it, what's wrong with it, can you identify the problem so we can work on it. And anyway, keep that in mind.
Appropriate context, expectations, that kind of thing.
Yeah, instead of just making a kind of a value statement, a value judgment about something, this is wrong, this is bad. Okay, what's wrong? Who does it affect? How does it affect them? How can we fix it? How do we address the problem in kind of that vein, instead of just saying this is bad and needs to go? Why is it bad? Who is it affecting? How do we address the problem? Is the cure worse than the kill, or,
Yeah, well, and you get those situations too where our hands may be tied, or future boards' hands may be tied on certain areas that are maybe, not necessarily up for a whole lot of discussion. So kind of, setting the stage for that, like I say, and tempering expectations and those kind of things that's definitely beneficial. So thanks for adding that in.
What was the other thing? Oh, gosh. Looking at the insurance, doing an annual reevaluation of the insurance and getting some bids out, and that would have to happen earlier too.
Yeah.
To kind of shop that out a little bit. That's all I got.
Okay. Any other committees, other than we've got some coming up, but we didn't have any past to report on? Okay. Consent action items, minutes and warrants.
I'll move to approve the minutes and warrants as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes and warrants as presented. Any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Academy.
Okay, we have no MOU with Montana Digital Academy at this point. It does sound like they did fund it again to the legislature, so I'm expecting one to come, but we have not received one at this point.
So we got some information on, just, it's interesting, and I don't know a lot about it yet, I still have to figure out what's going on with it, that through some legislature, Montana Digital Academy is proposing that there's like co-payments for schools now for credits. Did you see that at all, Eric? Or
I did not, but
I like, there's not much on it, and I'm just, it's like a proposal, I don't think it's anything that's happened yet or set in stone, but we or our students may have to start paying for Montana Digital Academy is the way I interpret that, and I don't know if that's correct or not.
I'm gonna have to look at that a little closer.
Check that, look for that and see what you find out.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they've been talking about that for a long time.
Okay, and like I said, there's not much out on it, and what I read was not real clear, so I'm not sure exactly what they're thinking.
Same thing
The
with.
same thing with the
Yeah.
Helen College, we haven't received an MOU from them either at this point. But
Compensated absence transfer.
Okay, so compensated absences, that's the fund that we use to compensate people who retire that are either classified or administrative. You can't use it for certified. So there is a formula in place that tells you how much you are allowed to transfer into the compensated absences fund from the general fund. With Pam retiring and myself, and we had a couple other retirements, and people that resigned, we basically depleted our compensated absence fund. And so there's a little worksheet in here that Steve Hamill did for us that tells us how much we're allowed to transfer. And so I'm going to ask the board to approve a general fund transfer of up to $40,000 to the compensated absence fund. Now, generally, what we do is we pick the highest part and say up to, and then we can only transfer what we actually have, which I'm not sure what we'll have at the end. We're still working on our budget at this point to just spend down and see where we're at with that. So we will transfer as much as we can. So this just gives us the freedom to go up to that amount.
We cannot go up. In that formula, it shows
It
47,000.
does say 47,000, but he said he wouldn't recommend the 40,000. He said, or 47, he said 40 would be a safe number to cover any retirees then maybe next year. You guys are used to seeing like 4,000 or 9,000 or something like that. So this is a big number, but like I said, we had some retirements that were that cost a little bit more.
Very good. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the general fund transfer up to $40,000 to the compensated absence fund.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the general fund transfer of up to $40,000 to the compensated absence fund. Any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Approved chairman of approval of additional claims in June.
Chair, we request that we give the chairman the ability to approve any claims in June as we near the end of the fiscal year. So we don't have to get them approved by the entire board, and we can start zeroing out our general fund.
I'll move to allow Chairman Noyes the ability to approve any June claims.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to allow Chairman Noyes the ability to approve any June claims. Is there any discussion?
Just a question, clarification, Mr. Chairman. So we're talking just regular operational claims,
Yes,
standard business.
standard business,
District business.
purchases that might come up, bills to be paid.
Thank you. I was 99% sure, but
Any more discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Individual transportation contracts.
Okay, each year, the board approves the individual transportation contracts. This year, we have requests from the Davies family and the Deal family, which are usually the ones. So I would ask that we approve the individual transportation contracts for the Davies and Deal family.
I'll move to approve individual transportation contracts as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the individual transportation contracts as presented. Any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Approve renewal of Montana Schools Property and Liability Insurance Plan.
Okay, so just to preface this, I saw this on our agenda today and thought, I haven't seen that yet, and thought maybe I made a mistake, and so I got a hold of them and said, I haven't seen this yet. Did I screw up and miss it somewhere? And she goes, oh no, we're sending them out today. And so they sent us ours, and I guess to my surprise, I guess I'm not too surprised. The amount of our insurance, property and liability insurance, has gone up over $14,000, almost $14,500. Last year it was, I know I wrote this down. Last year it was 75,891, and this year it's 90,310. The year prior to that, I think it was like $54,000. So it's going up at just an astronomical rate. Of course, there have been a lot of claims in the last few years, a lot of catastrophic hailstorms. I mean, we're one of them that's got a pile of money, and so they're trying to recoup some of those losses. So I find it oddly convenient for them to get those out the day of our board meeting, so you don't really know. And, you know, it's the end of the fiscal year, you're trying to get your renewal starting July 1. So I guess all I can say is that I'd recommend the approval of this at this time.
Fair motion.
Comment, for lack of a better thing on it, is just that's, you know, property, it's when they pay out claims and they actually end up spreading the burden of all of the claims that are paid across the pool of insureds. So while, yes, we're seeing an increase of $14,000, it's going to be proportionate to all of the other insurees that are covered underneath the plan. So
Just something I didn't plan for in our budget at this point,
Plus
which
inflation and building costs,
yeah,
it's
everything
ridiculous.
else.
Yeah.
yeah.
So-
breathing,
Is there anywhere else,
life.
any other options
More
for getting
expensive.
quotes?
There is one other option that we visited with a little bit earlier, but didn't pursue it, but there is another option. I'm trying to remember who that is, because this is through Payne West. Sean Bubb, MSGIA.
Because just thinking, if you guys have a meeting scheduled for the 22nd, I mean, I know it's a crunch, but maybe chop a little bit more than.
I can try to get ahold of Sean. I don't know if he'd be able to get everything done in that amount of time. Would be- But I think, again, for future reference, it's not a bad idea.
Well, and if we can be on I mean, our claims aren't gonna, you know, hopefully be a driver, and it's not something that you plan for, but if, you know, the beginning of January or February, you know, we're able to put the bug out there and be here that we're shopping for rates and trying to find other carriers. I would imagine that there's maybe one or two others. They're probably just not, you know, as well known or maybe as readily available, but there's got to be some other institutional insurance plan coverage that could be out there. But Mr. Chairman, I guess that I would move that we approve the renewal of the MSPLIP policy as presented.
I'll second it. It's been moved and seconded to approve the renewal of the MSPLIP as presented. Any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Approve handbooks for 2021, 2022.
Well, I can start. Basically, I think I speak for all of us that basically the only changes to our handbooks at this point are changes of dates.
I had a couple of word things.
You have a couple of word things. Okay, so I'll start with mine. I have the faculty handbook and classified employee handbook. I did print copies of them for you guys. It kind of was agreed across the board at several levels that probably this next year, start early, get with some teachers and see if we need to really revamp them. You know, most of the handbook that we do have is, actually, they're not too bad. I went through and cleaned it up a couple of years ago, just some of the errors that were in it, but didn't really change the content. So for my handbooks, it's just the change of years, basically.
Same thing with middle school and elementary.
High school's difficult. Not at all. So I just looked at, there were just a couple of things. I gave you guys a copy of the handbook and then just a couple of things. Basically, two of them are just, I guess we'll start from the bottom, work up. The one that is probably going to require some discussion and probably wouldn't happen today anyways is the one at the top. But on page 20 for our clubs and it was brought to my attention by our FFA advisor that we had a very archaic definition of our FFA club and organization and what they did. And she just wanted us to see if we could update it in the handbook to what the current description of FFA is as an activity, which it needed a little updated. It was pretty out of date. So that's it, just basically using FFA's national definition of their organization and what they do as listed in our clubs. And then the other one was, you know, we've worked on the target policies. And one of the suggestions that was made that we discussed with as a staff was having just on page 16, number 1, instead of targets accumulating for the entire year, have them cumulative for the semester, and then they would reset at semester. So a lot like our attendance policy, they just felt like that was more in line with what our attendance policy currently is. It's, you know, 10 absences per semester. That would give it a semester deadline as well. And it might keep kids from racking up quite so many at one time. So that was another suggestion or proposal. And the other one, we've had quite a few discussions over the last, you know, with pre-COVID and with the leadership team and our counselor just on graduation requirements. And so some of the things that were suggested were, or, you know, that we've discussed a lot is, one is, you know, the main premise is we have our total credit set at 23. So most of our kids are graduating, like a huge majority of our kids are graduating with between 25 and 28 credits anyways. By the time they take 7, you know, classes, you know, the whole year, they're accumulating that many credits anyways. And so one of the suggestions was that we should look at increasing our math credits to 3 credits required instead of just 2. It was felt like, you know, obviously English is 4, that's also an OPI or a state standard, but most of our students are meeting 3 math credits anyways. And even if they're going on a vocational track or you know, a tech track or a college track, that it might be beneficial to make sure kids get out of our high school with 3 years of math. Obviously not every kid is into the upper level math classes, so maybe we could look at, we tried it a few years ago doing like a technical math or consumer math or something that would be along, you know, that different track rather than just, you know, calculus and algebra 2 and trig and all of those pre-calc. So that was just one suggestion and thought. I just wanted we have some words under our computer tech section. We require 1 semester to computer technology. We just wanted to add the text that computer applications is required. That's our required. We just don't have that in print anywhere. It's just kind of knowing that computer applications is required. It's the base level computer class. Just kind of wanted to add that text in there, make it more formal. And then there's been a lot of talk with our staff about the vocational arts. We have 4 teachers teaching tons of vocational classes. We have business, we have all of the ag ed, we have all of the family consumer science, and then we have all of the industrial arts classes. And to get, to have our students engage in a few more of those classes, it was suggested to maybe up vocational credits to 2 instead of 1. And then not including computer classes, because right now kids can take their required computer classes and meet their vocational the way we have it set up. So they thought it might be nice to kind of sort those out, make computers a separate requirement, and then look at maybe upping the vocational arts, or just making computers separate, not having those be counted as vocational arts be a separate credit. And then we could still have kids taking, just kind of get the enrollment up in some of those classes since we have so many of them. And they're good. We have a lot of great classes in those areas that might encourage kids to jump on board and take some of those. So that's what I have. Some of it's super easy and some of it might require a lot more discussion.
So we have kids that come back or say, I wish I had been made to take more math, or most of those kids doing it?
Most of those kids are getting
They're
it.
doing
Most of those kids that are going on to that track anyways are getting it. I don't know, there's the feeling of, the teachers and the teacher leaders is that, it's a pretty important skill, to have good math background, no matter what the math is, just any math background. So very few kids are not doing more than are only doing 2. There are some, there are for sure. So I don't know. That's a tough one. I know.
I like the idea of the practical or applied math, for everyday type things. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think if it's gonna be required, it's important to have that option. I think that's a really good idea because
It's been a lot of our
that could be
discussion. Yeah.
one of the major factors in students dropping out is not being able to handle that higher level math.
Right, I don't want to set them up to struggle,
No.
the ones that aren't doing that already on their own.
Right. And the general math track for most students, either they're taking pre-algebra or algebra 1 their first year. Most students, not all, but most. And then, and then they're moving on to geometry and algebra 2. Those are probably the math classes that are hit the most. But at that like second or third year, if you had a consumer math or an applied math, a technical math or something like that, that could be an option too. So yeah, I know math's tough. As a very struggling math person myself, I understand the rationale.
Yeah, that could even be tied into like business accounting or ag business or.
Well, and maybe, because we have
Yeah, construction stuff. I mean, there's a lot that can.
We have accounting, we already have that, so maybe that could, we've added Clint's computer drafting class counting as to be able to count as their second computer class, because that's all they're doing is working with, programs for the computer with the SolidWorks and all of that, so just the thoughts.
There's some good like math for the trades kind of programs.
What did you, I'm sorry, what did you say?
There's some good like math for the trades kind of programs that
Yes.
I looked at before.
And we did try that, we tried to do kind of a combined class, it was several years
A lot
ago.
off the press.
So, I definitely feel like if that was a consideration, we did want to raise the bar a little bit, that would definitely have to be a piece of the puzzle too, because we don't want to set kids up for failure, and we don't want to scare them off from finishing high school. Yeah, definitely.
No, I mean, there's nothing wrong with pushing kids and challenging kids either.
Talking to my colleagues, I mean, the average credits required by individual schools, it sits right in that, 24 to 26. That's pretty common. So I guess they used to have study halls here years and years ago, and that like actually counted for a credit of some kind, or I don't know. That's how we ended up with, they can graduate with 23 credits, and I didn't quite understand the entire story. Kelly tried to tell it to me one time, and I was like, okay. But
MTSBA initiated a kind of an informal survey, must have been maybe January or February, something like that, where the question came of how many credits does it take, for a student to graduate from your district? And most of them were like 25, 26 on up. I mean, there were a couple that were 28, 29.
we're actually all we are.
So we're on the low end a little bit, but I found that interesting because even though we say, and I think it was probably reflective in the response that they got, they say, our requirement is 23, but our average student is graduating 26,
Mhm.
like say, kind of like you say. So, it's a tough thing that, do you try to phase that in? Do you just make the jump? Do you inform them in advance that, and provide that information that, so it doesn't sound like it's just kind of an arbitrary jump and
Well, and all of us
So-
agree that, we want to keep our academic rigor here in the high school. We
absolutely.
want to keep the bar high, but not unattainable either. I kind of put a little blurb in there. We've dealt with it a couple times already this year, that there's new legislation that covers if there's a hardship case for students that cannot, for some reason or other, may not graduate, they can petition to graduate based on the fact that they met the state requirements. So the state requirements are lower than what a lot of schools have, really. As long as they've met those state OPI requirements of the English and the math and then if they've met those, then if they can petition to graduate based on that and instead of what the school is requiring or the individual school is requiring.
Does that kind of dovetail from like taught not graded or
I don't know.
showing a proficiency or?
Well, I
So
don't
the
think
state
so.
requirement's 20, right?
Yeah.
And then most of the AA districts, I think are required 21, like I know Billings is,
Right.
I think Caroline's right around there. What I've seen is like the more rural schools have a higher credit.
But most are bigger, like Billings only has 6 classes, that's why they only have 21, where we have
Yeah.
7.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that provides a little bit of a caveat there if there is, and like I said, I've never even heard of that before until this year. I think it's something fairly new and we bumped into it twice this year with a couple of kids, so. One didn't meet the state requirement, so we couldn't do anything to help, but.
Who determines the hardship?
Superintendent, if I remember correctly in the bill.
They have to write a petition or something and then, yeah. I don't know if there were criteria for
I
the
remember
hardship.
reading the bill and it was
Yeah,
not important at the time kind of thing.
yeah, definitely. That does put the
The
superintendent in
hardships
a
is
tough.
very difficult to prove and be equitable on.
Right.
So anyways,
Yeah, I do like the vocational arts thing. I think, a lot of kids don't look at those sometimes because of the stigma that goes with that. But, like I said, we got a lot of great teachers and a lot of great programs. And like we talked about the other night, trying to incorporate real world skills and stuff. I think a lot of these kids, if they had to take a class, they might find out they actually enjoyed it and learned
just
something that
being
would
exposed to it is
carry them
half the battle.
on in life. So, yeah. Very good. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, I might just make one, it's just kind of a postscript on this or maybe a springboard going into the next school year. When we had discussions about modifications to some of our discipline policies, discussions came up about, I guess, if you will, verbiage changes in handbooks to try to marry up with MTSBA policies. And Vanessa, had even mentioned wanting to have some input on a couple of issues that she was privy to as well. And so while, just through the course of the end of this year, we weren't able to really tackle handbook edits of that kind. And it's fairly labor intensive to look at the policies and to make sure that the handbook mirrors the policies that we have adopted. That is something that I think is a worthwhile effort. And so that would be something that at some point I think deserves referral to the Student Affairs Committee for review of that. So it's going to have to fall, at some point in a schedule that works for everybody. But, I would at least like to kind of plant the seed and know that discussion is still in my mind when it comes to the handbook. Not that I think that there's anything that's fatally wrong in the handbook that needs to be addressed right now, but just as a general course of business, we should review the handbook, either with legal counsel or not, and make sure that it holds water with the same amount of force and whatnot as inconsistency as our policies do.
Agree. Is there a motion?
So are we tabling? That's the recommended motion, or are we?
Well, I guess my thought is we probably need to approve the contracts we have going into the coming year and look at making those revisions, edits, changes prior to doing it next year. But maybe that's not what you.
I'm 2 days late on my handbook deadline.
They need to actually get the handbooks sent in to have them put into the planners for next year. So my recommendation would be to approve them as presented, edited with, for this year, and then use next year as a time to review and work on them for next year's approval.
You have anything to say?
Nothing changed but dates.
So, Mr. Chairman, then would the appropriate motion be to move the approval of all 4 handbooks? 3 handbooks.
That should be 5 total.
Should be 5.
Yep.
But are there terms through the negotiations committee and the contracts, like a bargain, that need to be?
Well, the classified one actually has to be renegotiated next year. It's in its 5th year now, so we have to redo negotiations.
I think the contract and handbooks are separate though. They're not the same document.
Correct.
So,
I misunderstood.
So there aren't any.
so no, the CBA didn't change the handbook.
Okay. I guess we'll jump forward then. Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the 5 handbooks for the elementary school, middle school, high school, the faculty handbook, and the classified employee handbook as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve, I'm just going to say the 5 handbooks and updates for the 2021-2022 school year. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. So I think, we'll get to the committee things. I think we just need to, when we get to that committee assignment, need to make that a priority for that committee. Moving forward. Okay. Approve the school county library budget.
Okay, so we have this year's budget and on the next second page, the last year's budget. So there's an increase to the county of, approximately $6,000. Much of that was through, the increase in salaries and cost of supplies and those types of things. And so the school was relatively the same. It went up slightly, but that's because we split some of those costs, and so ours didn't go up as much because our school salaries are in a separate budget or line item all to themselves. So basically, we're looking at this budget would ask the county for $71,309.30. This budget has been approved through the library board at this point. It would be approved by our board next, and then it would go to the county for their approval. So I ask you to approve the budget as presented.
I'll move to approve the school county library budget as presented.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the school county library budget as presented. Any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Approved certified negotiated agreement. So basically, we went through all those changes that we agreed to during that process. And unless there's more questions, motion.
I'll move to approve the negotiated agreement for the 2021 through 2023 school years.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the negotiated agreement for the 2021, 2020 through 2023 school years. Any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, motion passes. Okay, now the committee assignments that we put on the back burner last month.
Well, since Sean's not here, I would nominate him.
I did speak with Sean on the phone. I won't tell you exactly what he said, but he would like to stay on the Student Services Committee and the Curriculum Committee. He feels those are areas of his strength and feels he has contribution put there. And there was only one that he said he adamantly didn't want to be on, but I think we probably all know what that one is. He just said he'd rather not be on the library board. I said, well, we'll see what happens.
There you go. Start that nomination.
That's kind of what Kevin's thinking of.
I
It's
guess
not that bad.
I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are. I think we're doing,
Library board's okay, it's great, they do great things. They have a great life.
I think we're starting to bring these, committees back into existence a little better than we have. My thought would be, I know we did it last year too, but just keep things the same and get some continuity and get the ball rolling on some of these things that we've talked about. But I am open to what other people think.
I think as far as the assignments go, keeping those the same are okay. Mr. Chairman, maybe something we could approach, again, I think necessarily needs to be addressed now or like an action item per se, but there are some districts that, well, Helena comes to mind, that actually has a committee on policies. And the committee reviews the district policies. They take them kind of a chunk at a time and try to do some of the heavy lifting with legal counsel, be it independent counsel that like we've used before out of Missoula or with MTSBA counsel to ensure that the compliance and the kind of the policy direction that the board would like to see are both met, and policy development kind of plays in all parts of the sandbox here. We have student services and discipline-oriented policies and facility policies and curriculum policies and those kinds of things. So it may also behoove the district, just for consistency, to have, perhaps it might be something that we start up as kind of a select committee, if you will, and be something that would maybe establish some protocols and see how viable that actually might be. So then that way the committee can make formal recommendations as a whole on all of the policies, instead of Sean and I making a policy review recommendation to the board from Student Services Committee and then having the curriculum oriented policies being brought from that committee. And I read through some of the minutes, and I've actually spoken to Libby Goldies, who's the chair for that committee in Helena School District, and they actually believe it works real well to try to streamline, review, and to effectuate the policies better. So, but as far as our slate of standing committees go, I do think that you know, the committees as presented work well, but I would like to see if maybe we explore and have some discussion, either at whether it be as a formal action item or in some sort of a work meeting, just exactly how that might be structured, and we could ask School Board Association or legal counsel or Helena School District or something like that for maybe a little bit of a primer on how it is that they move forward with that. So
I know some schools, and we talked about it, it seemed a year or two ago, you know, that some people have legal counsel do their policy review.
Yeah.
For a fee. MTSBA does it. As we've gone through it, I think there is, I mean, obviously there's a cost to it, but I think there's some merit to utilizing the board's time maybe more effectively than we do sometimes. But I think creating a policy committee might be a better start than what we're doing too.
yeah, I guess from my standpoint, I see that legal counsel review isn't a substitute for making the policy decisions that the board, any board wants to see put in. But there's so many required policies, both substantively and so many procedurally oriented policies. Having somebody that is very well versed in it, that can cut through the kind of the trappings and the structure of those policies and say, this is why this policy is important. These are the variables that the typical boards address. Review this and let me know what it is that you know should be drafted into that policy. I think that's fine, because then we still have that discussion of which direction it is that we want to take on a given policy.
Yeah, I think a couple of things on that. I'm not opposed to a committee, but I think having a policy review within the context of the entire board is important. So all board members are aware of and have participated in the discussion of our policies over the course of 3 years. We should cover about everything, and it's I think it makes us better board members. And I guess the second part of that is, I mean, it's our job to represent our community to our administration, and the primary instrument that we have to do that is our policy. So if that's created by MTSBA or some legal service, are we really representing, are we doing our job and representing our community? I think, you know, board involvement is very important in all of that, but that's my 2 cents.
Absolutely, it is, but I think sometimes the policies that we see are kind of a verbatim recitation, sometimes selected recitations of statute, and having somebody that can say, this is what the policy is intended to achieve, and what does the board think of that, and is that something that the board would like, and have those discussions. Yeah, like I say, I don't think anything like that minimizes the review, but it maybe takes some of the load off of administration trying to interpret what the policy changes are doing as they've been told by say, the school board association.
Well, the ones that take the most times are the ones that, we've originated and have kind of been unique to our district. And those are the ones that have taken the most amount of time, or when we get into a gray area on something. But, as you well know, those are the time consuming ones. The easy ones, are verbatim, but the other ones where we're trying to, make an improvement or adjustment, or trying to adjust to our student population, I think are the ones that take some time, and I think they require our involvement as community members, as representatives of our community.
Mr. Chairman, do we need a motion then to approve the
I think we
the
do.
reorganization?
Yep.
I didn't see it. It's an action item, but I didn't see it on the.
Well, it was on the one he emailed, the
Gotcha.
adjustment.
Yeah.
Because we missed it on the first one.
Yeah, yes. There is more there. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the reorganization of the committee assignments for the 2021-2022 school year. The date at the top of the committee assignments needs to be advanced.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the committee assignments as presented.
Sounds good.
Is there any further discussion?
I guess just as an alternate, I would maybe like to know when some of these meetings are happening. So when I get bored, I can kind of see what I'd be filling in on.
You get bored?
I think it's a
Sounds
very good,
wonderful.
very good idea. Being the alternate juror, you never know when you may be called in to make the case.
Any further discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Resignations,
No resignations.
that's good. Employment,
And I don't know how much you guys want to do. I know that the negotiations committee did meet with each one of the administrators to negotiate the copy of their contract. We have included those in your packet. I don't know if you guys want to talk about anything that's in there.
no, I really enjoyed the process again, to sit down with each one of them and visit about the past year, the things that I think we do well and the things that we need improvement on. I think it's a great thing we do. Like I said, I'd like to move that up earlier in the year for everybody's benefit too. But no, I think it's a great process to sit down and visit with each one of them and kind of talk about how things are going, a little more personalized, and I think we gain a lot, and hopefully we can bring some of that information back to the district and to the board and implement what needs implemented. I don't know if Kevin has any more to add.
No, I agree completely, and it'd be nice to find a way that we could meet and maybe have those discussions at other times of the year as well. Maybe quarterly or something like that, just to check in, because they are very valuable, and I appreciate you guys and everything you do, so.
I agree, they're very valuable.
If not, we'll have a motion to approve those contracts.
I'll move to approve, contract with Brad Rock, Sherry Hebron, and Christina Hartman for 2021.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the contracts for Brad Rock, Sherry Heverin, and Christina Hartman for the 2021-2022 school year as presented. Any further discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Approve activities bus drivers.
I'm asking that you approve the following activities bus drivers. Bob Brastrup, Norm Darlington, Dallas Steele, Gary Olson, Ed Schendel, Frank Spreitzer, Corinne Swan, Gail Bennis, Clint Watson, Kelly Linda Buffy Woodring, and Larry Woodring.
Your motion.
I will move to approve the activities bus drivers as presented.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the activities bus drivers as presented. The question I got is, how do we recruit or find some more activities bus drivers?
Every time we've advertised, we've gotten zilch, but we can keep trying. Maybe there's.
Well, Vanessa gets bored sometimes.
CDL, there you go, Vanessa.
She just volunteers for a lot of stuff. No, I think one of the things, Jason, that would help, I really do, is maybe throwing it out to some of the, just, I guess, making people aware as their kids. I think there's a few people who have kids starting school or younger in school whose students will be in a lot of activities as they come up. And I think if you can, we've had guys like Frank that have driven through, luckily had so many kids that were one after another. I really do, if you can find, tap into some of those that are going to events anyway. And I've had a couple in the last year or two that have mentioned that maybe they'd be interested as our kids are getting older. And I think if we can make, I don't know if a lot of people are aware of how dire our need is for activity.
Going some sort of a campaign process.
Yeah.
So if we had a interested person that did not have their CDL, but was willing to get that, would that be something that the district could cost share with them in? Or, I don't, in the news, the Helena News last night, there was a story on the fact that there is a CDL program through the Helena College of Technology. And it's one of the few CDL specific programs that are actually taught at the COT level. But, I sometimes it seems to me that if there's a requirement for something like that, that the ordinary person might not have, but they at least have the want, to be able to do it, that maybe trying to somehow incentivize that, if at all possible, is worth having the discussion about.
Or even just sharing that information, because I think a lot of people don't have a clue, how you go about getting your CDL or how you know what I mean?
You
They
usually just
give-
walk in and grab that book, and most people
Yeah.
just get intimidated right
They go,
there.
And it's not easy.
No,
The
it's
test
it's
is
not.
just
It's not.
it's quite common to fail,
It's
especially
a hard test.
The walk
the
around.
walk around, yeah.
Yeah, and the COT program itself was very detailed. It was 200 hours of, doesn't meet the legal requirement, that meets the requirement for them in order to be able to get some sort of accreditation or certificate for completion of that. But
Then they just have to take the passenger portion, which that part wasn't very hard.
And at $8 an hour, they're gonna make that time up in no time.
Yeah, that's the other part of
That's
the
the other
equation.
thing. Yeah.
We gotta- We got to find a way budget-wise to incentivize it more than we.
Everything.
Yeah. No,
And it's a big,
It's a huge responsibility.
it's just such a, I admire some of those drivers, some of the stuff I know.
Those
when I
winter time.
coached coming back were just miserable. And I mean, it's a big responsibility for people to take on.
Yeah.
They do a good job.
Is all we require a CDL, or is there any?
background
There'd be a
check.
background check. And
Yeah, background check, the CDL, and then there's a passenger portion. And with CDL, usually it's air brakes. But I went in and took the test, I passed it. And then,
Guys can't.
and then, yeah, I know, but the lady says, well, you take the air brakes? I'm like, well, I didn't study for it. She goes, well, sit down for 10 minutes and look it over, and then I'll let you take the test. Okay, so I did. But yeah, I didn't do the walk around or the driving test, so. I was supposed to have somebody do that with me. I won't
Couldn't
name
get my birth
him, but he
certificate.
he couldn't.
And I can't pass an eye test. Don't want me driving your kids. After dark. Sorry, we gotta stay tonight.
Have a future career in driving for
You never know. I'd like to hear about that hell in a college thing. Yeah, what might be my next career.
You can drive a new bus. We've got a 1-year-old bus that you can drive, and it is very nice.
And a lot of people said, oh, I have a CDL, I'll do that. But then, just the regular CDL, you have to have
You gotta get the passenger.
Which is actually
A lot of them
not
just
that
are not willing to-
difficult. It's,
Yeah, just people aren't willing to do that. Because a lot of the local farmers and ranchers have a CDL.
Very good. Any further discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Approve spring activities contracts.
okay, the only edit to this one is that head coach Rao has asked me to remove Pat Hamilton from this list at this point. He said he would like another month to visit with, he would like to visit with him first before we approve that. So that's the only one. So I would recommend the rehire of the individuals that I have listed there. I can read them if you want, so we can go so moved. John Odell for head tennis, Amy White for assistant tennis halftime, Lindsay Moldenauer, assistant tennis halftime, Pete Robichon, head golf, Wendy Gravely, assistant golf, Travis Rao, head high school track, Angie Tu, assistant high school track, Brooke Dolan, assistant high school track, Jamie Lawson, junior high track, Gary Bowman, junior high track, Missy Rock, junior high track.
Your motion.
I'll move to approve the spring advisors and coaches for the 2021-2022 school year as presented.
I'll second it. It's been moved and seconded to approve the spring advisors and coaches for the 2021-2022 school year as presented. Any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Policy 5120P.
Again, this will be the second reading for 5120P. It's basically, we were told we better get something in place, so that's what this is. Again, we're going with the option 3 that we use the local law enforcement to get our fingerprints under retention storage. We have option 1, they're stored until final determination has been made or 2 weeks less, and then they're destroyed. Under dissemination, school district does not disseminate their criminal history records. Destruction procedures, we have option 1 at the end of retention storage period outlined. It's shredded in-house. Applicant procedures for challenging, the wishing to challenge, they have basically 10 days to contact state agency, which record and give us something that is corrected to change that. Those are kind of just the highlights, but those are our procedures. So I would ask that you approve policy 5120P4. I'm sorry, I was first reading there, it should be second reading. The old cut and paste copy.
I'll move to approve MTSBA model policy 5120P on a second reading.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve MTSBA model policy 5120P on second reading. Any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Principals report, Mr. Rock.
All right, eighth grade awards night. Thank you to Vanessa and Todd, came and helped us out with that. Went smoothly. If you guys remember, the last time we had prior to that, we did by the light of our.
Power out.
Yeah, that was crazy.
So that was the most normal one we've had in a long time. One of the things we talked about the last part of the year was the deadline to get everything else. They could do the abatement in the middle school and upper elementary. We got that out. The teachers did a great job. The kids helped a lot. Sherry and the high school teachers sent a pile of kids over on the last couple of days of school and helped us move. And we just moved it all. Jim got everything ready. Had I don't know if you've been down there, he just taped off places in the multi-purpose room for each teacher to put all their things. Went really smoothly. We did, obviously, the last couple of days, we didn't even have any furniture in those rooms. They were totally bare, but it went really, really well, and everybody did what they were supposed to do. So I was kind of concerned that there's always that one or two people that just didn't meet the deadline, and that would have really held things up. So went really smoothly. The kids were great, and thank you for all the help the high school gave us too.
High school had a great time. They actually loved it. They were very happy to go over the so it was good.
Yeah, now obviously we're going to face the same crunch moving back in. The difficulty with that is we'll have to do that when students aren't here. And I think it's pretty clear that there's a lot of concern about that timeline and having everything ready to go. So I think it's going to be a big crunch. And I know, at that time of year, it's tough because the custodial and maintenance staff is super busy at that last couple of weeks before school starts. So we'll find a way to make it work, but it's gonna.
Football players.
I was thinking.
Well, I think probably would.
I was just gonna say,
Volleyball will be
conditioning
practicing.
and practicing, cross country, we'll get them all in there.
We'll get it done, but it'll happen. And we were able to, probably some of those teachers have been in those rooms for 20 some years. It's, how it is. So it was actually probably pretty good. So next year, kind of along the same lines, what I'll do, and it'll probably be not up in, about the time we can move back in there. I'll move back down to that what I used to use as a junior high office. It's now a copy room. We've been told that there'll be a workroom in the old band room. So those copiers will be out of there, and I'll move back down to there, and Christina can move into this office here. And then we're still working. I think we pretty well have our class schedule finalized for next year. We've had to make some changes because the numbers just don't work with the teachers we have and the classes we need. So we've kind of made a couple alterations to our exploratory schedule. One of the problems we face that's really challenging is band. Historically, is a very popular class, and that falls into that exploratory block because there's no other time of the day to do that. So we end up with these classes. We offer, say, 3 exploratory classes opposite band for the students that aren't in those. And we end up with some really small classes on the band. The semesters we have band, and then we end up with these huge overflowing classes on the semesters that we offer the chorus. So we trimmed one of those back to help with those numbers at the 6th grade level. I think everything will work out. Some teachers, we've had to shift some teachers around what they were teaching. They've been really good about it. They just, in fact, the ones I moved just said, you just tell me what to teach, and we'll, what classes I'm doing, and that's what I'll teach. So it's been really good. So we'll make it work again. Yeah. But, you know, the last thing I guess I'd like to say about the year being that this is, I guess, our last board meeting for the year is, you know, this year was hard, obviously, we all went through it, but, you know, I don't know if it was so much difficult as it was unique. When I look back at it, it was a very unique year. You know, usually you kind of have a little bit of idea of what's gonna create problems and what's gonna be really time consuming, and there's always a couple unexpected things that come up, but I mean it when I say overall, the kids in our school were wonderful. They did. They made it, and the teachers were, you know, teachers are creatures of habit, I think, like a lot of us are, and change is not always easy, and they made changes on the fly that were far more drastic than anything we've asked them to make in a long, long time. And same with the kids. The kids came to school after about day 2. It really, you know, toward the end, obviously, things got to be a little bit of a grind, but they did a wonderful job. And, you know, if you didn't have teachers that were on board with things, and the kids weren't great, and overall parents were really, really supportive, as we've talked about. It really made what could have been a very, very, almost close to impossible year work. And it ended up being a little inconvenient, a little unique, but when you look back on it, I think some of the things probably that if we were in a, you know, quote unquote normal year would have caused some problems, didn't this year. I think everybody just kind of stepped up and got things done. So it was, I don't want to do it again, but it overall, it was a pretty decent year. It really was, compared to what it could have been.
Ms. Everett.
All right. So we, since our last board meeting, obviously we finished up all of our spring activities. They just did great. Again, you know, as Brad alluded to, in unusual, unique circumstances, and basically missing an entire season for those spring kids. They didn't get to even have those seasons last year at all. So they did well. Track, we had 2 state champions in individual events in track, and Muskilty won the mile. And little freshman Haven Vandenacre won the 300-meter hurdles, which that is a brutal race. I don't know how anybody even does that race. Everybody should get a medal that even tries it. So she did awesome. Broke school records all over the place. The boys 4x1 relay team broke the school record twice, and once in the qualifiers, and then the next day they broke it again. So kids did well. I think they were just happy to be outside, happy to be doing their stuff, and excited to be competing. We did have another freshman, Peyton Tony, took 4th at state golf for the boys. So that was and a couple of really tight matches there for our doubles that they almost got into the medals as well. So they competed well. I'm really proud of them and all of their efforts, and all the coaches and everybody just getting back into the normal role of things. We actually also, Denise Baucom was gracious and said, you know, can we do a spring play? And I'm like, let's do it. So we ran it much like our other activities. It was invite only for their parents and just a small group of folks. And they cranked out and practiced to play in a very short period of time. And it was great. If any of you got to see it, it turned out really great. And it was good for those kids to get back to their activities as well. So we were happy to be able to have that. Prom and graduation also went just really well, very smooth. Thanks to Todd and Sean for helping us with graduation again. We still had to modify some things, and boy, that gym felt a lot more full than last year. We had quite a few more people, and you know, there were things that weren't necessarily still perfect, but they went really well. I was very happy. We got them all graduated, and they were happy. They loved their Bulldogs on Broadway parade, even though it poured rain and they looked like a bunch of drowned rats by the time it was over, but they had a good time. End of year, as Brad said, in such a wild and crazy situation that we were dealing with, it went smooth. I mean, everybody just did what they needed to do. We got things buttoned up. One of my things was the high school was really excited to help move the middle school and elementary. They felt like they were a part of something and giving some good help there. And I had kids return anytime they had a second. Do they need help over there again? Do they need help over there again? So that was really great. I think, you know, I was just saying it, with the morale went up when the masks weren't required anymore. It definitely changed the entire tone and of the building. Not that they were troopers and they did well, but you could sure see kind of a lift in spirits with that. So that was nice to see. It was good. Kids were excited to see each other's faces. I think a lot of it was. So that was a good positive thing. Trying to think what else we did. That students, some of the high school kids, a lot of them participated in Egg Days and they enjoyed that as well. We too are trying to finalize our master schedule. We have some staffing changes that we're still working on. Brad and I are working on a few things, moving some people around. So we're getting close, hopefully, that we can handle some of those things that we're looking at. And then I did have on here, you know, you guys had mentioned about having updates on our conditional enrollment student. I'm not sure how to handle that or what the appropriate way is to discuss that, but you know, I didn't know if you wanted to ask questions or just kind of put it on there to open the door, but I'm not sure how that works in this circumstance, so.
We didn't have that many.
We just had the one.
We just had the one. Yeah, so
We just had the one. So,
that part of it, I think is pretty good, but I don't know, my only question maybe would be to ask as we go forward, how the kind of procedurally, the mechanics of it, how and how it's applied, how it worked out. Having, say, a third party do the testing and you know, were there things that need to be documented better or differently, and are those things that we need to build into the agreement, or are those just things that we need to build into our process? So that is, you know, kind of where I'm at, but I appreciate you putting that on, and because that I saw that and I went, oh yeah. So it was in my brain and out of my brain, and so that put it back in. So thank you.
and yeah, we don't have any upcoming activities. Done for a while. For a while.
How are the
It's a good year,
the
even though it was
camps going? I guess that's kind of a little bit of a, you know, broad-based kind of thing, but.
Wait, you see all of our stuff out here?
Yeah, well, that, and then I pulled up and you know, seeing, you know, the kids leaving from the afternoon sessions and things like that.
Yeah, actually, we have quite a few people interested, and I've actually had to turn some away for some that are already full. So, yeah, that's been really great, great participation this year.
We had a lot of basketballers in the building today, so it was so quiet last week, and now with that changed today, and it was nice. It actually was good to hear kids in there having fun and the noise in the gym. They were so excited they were showing up yesterday because they wanted to start. So it was good.
Can I add one thing?
You bet.
I forgot that Sherry reminded me of. Our second to last day of school was Ag Day, and there's a ton of people that have to do that. Lisa Larson puts in a lot of work kind of heading that up, and there's a lot of people. I couldn't possibly mention everybody that helps. And our community, you know, puts, I think you'd be shocked at the donations they receive and the support that receives from some of our local farmers, ranchers, businesses. And if you've never been out there, I really encourage you to try to swing by out there sometime when they do it. It's a wonderful, wonderful learning activity. And it is a busy place, and there are a lot of people that give their time and help out with it. Really worthwhile. And I know it's a long way off, and we'll try to remind you next year, but that it's really worth stopping by if you've never seen it.
Northwestern Energy was out there lighting fire.
Yeah,
So
it was really
great.
cool.
No, that was great.
Except it was Vigilante Electric.
Oh, was it vigilante? Sorry.
Mr. Wilkerson.
I recommend you stop during lunch, like right when.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's when we show up for some.
Yeah, just don't go in the building, go out back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't say people out
Yeah. We know how it works.
there. It's no good.
I heard 2 people showed up and just, vanished.
Mr. Wilkerson.
Just, I didn't do a report, and then one thing just kind of came up, but you guys, legislature is allowing homeschool students to participate in activities now. We don't know all the gist of the whole thing, but they are supposed to be accountable for their grades, for,
I
all
received a
sorts of
thing
stuff,
from
but we're-
MHSA on that.
yeah, so
just
we're still
recently.
gathering information, just an FYI. The only other thing I have is, I just want to thank the board and the district for a wonderful experience over the past 6 years. It's been both a pleasure and an adventure, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
And that's all I have.
Anything else? Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Oh, a couple things to sign.